Hi everyone, today I want to talk about what needs to go in your scientific paper. Remember, the paper is optional. This Edpuzzle is optional. But I'm going to give you a couple reasons why you might consider writing a paper so that you feel prepared for your poster as well. It'll help you kind of cement things a little bit better and feel more confident going into our presentations. Why you should write your paper? The short answer is because it makes everything else better. It makes you more confident. It makes you more able to write as much as you like forever and ever, and it makes you able to take snippets of your paper and put it as your poster, because the poster is a snapshot of the paper. So if your poster doesn't have enough context in one spot, let's say you go and read a poster and you're like, I wonder how they put together that methodology, or I don't know where that number came from in their data. Well, they can go and read your paper for more information. The poster is a visual aid for your paper. So writing a paper forces you to clarify your thinking and make it as exact as possible, to justify your choices and show that you actually thought about each step in the process of making your product, and connecting the data that you achieved to real meaning and be able to eloquently put that together in paragraph form. By the way, side note, another reason why you should write a paper is that there has never been a scholarship winner who did not write a paper. The judges have only given scholarships to those who have written a paper indeed. So you don't have to write a paper. You can win a scholarship without it, but I'm telling you that that is not what has historically happened. Besides, writing your paper first, your poster becomes easier after that. You can use parts of your paper and put it into the poster if that's the way you want to write it. Sure, you can dive right into your poster and just BS your way through it the whole way, but it's not going to be as good as if you write the paper, BS in huge broad terms, and then put your poster together based on that. Don't worry, by the time that you've written both of them, we're going to make sure that it doesn't sound like BS, okay? Now, the anatomy of a scientific paper does vary from paper to paper, especially if your project is not an experiment. You know I am good at experiments, and therefore that is the kind of paper I know how to write. Well, if your paper is a policy change or an invention or a systematic review, you might not have all parts of this paper, or you might have other parts to your paper. Each and every one of you should be working with me specifically on how to structure your paper. But I'm going to give you the general ones to pay attention to. First off, the title, duh. The abstract, we'll talk about abstracts later on, is kind of optional, but it is a good idea for those that are not able to read your whole paper in one sitting. The introduction is just the background. The methods section, the results section, and discussion section all deal with what you did, what you found, and what it means. And then there might be a separate limitation section, or you might put it in the discussion section. Additionally, you'll have a conclusion question, but that sometimes is put inside the discussion section or is called altogether conclusion. Up to you entirely. I've seen it done a ton of ways, and so have you, because you read all those different papers from your literature review. Finally, you'll have to have your references section. We'll talk about limitations in abstract in another video, because those are a little bit harder to write, and they tend to be something that people have a really hard time with, trying to construct in a way that doesn't make you sound like you didn't accomplish anything in your paper, especially if it didn't work out the way you thought it would. But the big idea here, like I said, your paper will look different than your neighbor's. So the big idea is purpose, as in every section should have a purpose rather than sticking to one specific format that goes through the whole entire thing. Now, each individual section I'm going to go through very quickly about what to expect in that section, but we'll start with the title. Duh, it's the title. It gives me a scope of the project in one line. You can use the title from your project proposal if you'd like to. You can also edit it and make it new in case you've changed your methodology or changed your variables at all. But really, that title you made for a project proposal is a pretty good one. It shows us what we studied. It shows us the system or population involved, if there's a specific variable involved, a comparison, a goal. It tells me what I should know, and it's precise. It's not super duper clever with like puns or anything like that. It avoids getting conclusions ahead of time. It doesn't tell me the end result ahead of time. It also doesn't hype things up and tell me that this is the greatest project in the world or that you solved a specific problem. It is just the analysis of one thing, or the interpretation of one thing, or the presentation of one thing. It's not supposed to be the end-all be-all answer. So make sure that the title does not assume the end result in your work. The introduction is going to be really simple for you to write. The reason why is you can use your purpose statement in literature review to do the following things. You're going to tell me what is already known. You're going to tell me what the problem or gap that still exists is, that is the thing that you're trying to solve here. And you're telling me why this project should be justified. Again, that sounds exactly like the purpose statement and the literature review. So you can take your purpose statement literature review and put it into the introduction. Maybe beef it up if it wasn't very long, or if you want to, just leave it the way it is. You guys did pretty good jobs. Take my feedback from before and see if you can edit it a little bit if you like to. The main goals of the introduction is to build from very general ideas to very specific things in each paragraph, not just summarizing, but synthesizing. Using sources to establish credibility. You're still going to use AMA citations, and you'll end with that. We put the purpose statement in the project proposal at the beginning. You're kind of going to end with a clear research question or goal in your introduction, which means that in your literature review, if you didn't do that, you can take your purpose statement and put it at the end of the introduction and be pretty good. You might have to do some editing so it makes sense, but you should be okay. The method section is going to be very much the same as your project proposal if you wrote it in paragraph form. There are no bulleted or numbered lists in scientific papers. Remember all the papers you read? You didn't see any bulleted lists there, did you? No. You should be able to tell me exactly what your process is so I can understand it. I should be able to replicate your approach, so you might have to list off those concentrations that you had different chemicals at, or the timeline that you did your breeding at, if you did worms or eggs or something like that. And it should allow me to judge the validity of your results. By looking at your results, if I see something fishy, I can look at your method section and say, oh, that's where something went wrong, or oh, that's where they got the change that I didn't expect. You should be pretty detailed, but you should not be biased in one direction. It should be very neutral. You should assume, by the way, that these readers have a basic understanding of chemistry, so they know how to make solutions. They know how to make agar gels, basic aseptic techniques, stuff like that. You're going to focus on decisions and structure rather than itty-bitty nitty-gritty stuff. It should be detailed, but detailed about your decisions and the structure of it. So I set up 3 trials of each concentration and observed after 2 days is plenty detailed. And again, if there's any design choices that you and I had to work through, like maybe you had something unexpected occur and you had to add something to your protocol, you should be able to justify those design choices whenever necessary. This is probably the hardest part of the paper to write. It's called the results section. It reports what happened, but it does not give me any interpretation on what happens during that. Meaning that you're going to want to write, this is because blah, 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 blah. No, the results section just tells me straight up the results. As in, the reader should be able to understand on their own trends and patterns just by looking at your evidence only. It should be complete with quantitative outcomes and give me clear visual evidence in table form or graph form. If you are going to put your tables in there, you do not want tables that have every single data point ever. That would be crazy. No one wants to read all that. Instead, your data should be cleaned up and show me averages or the calculations and stuff like that. If you haven't given me your data table yet to clean up for you, let me know, and we can get started on that. You just have to make something to start out. Strong writing here should be objective, meaning there should be no interpretation or synthesis here. It's just facts. It should refer to the figures that you make, the tables and graphs, instead of restating them. And it should avoid explaining why the results occurred, because the very next section, discussion, is where you discuss the meaning and the implications, as in the why of the results. So in the discussion section, you're going to tell the reader what the results suggest and how they connect to prior research or expectations. It could be that you didn't have those expectations for your results, and therefore you should also in your discussion talk about why some outcomes may differ than the predictions or the research that you saw earlier. This is where you kind of fill in the gaps between the lines, per se. You give me a little bit more context to the facts that actually happened in your research project. You should also, in this section, maybe acknowledge limitations, as in if time was a limitation and you didn't get to do as many trials as you liked, that's a good limitation. If the equipment that we had was not suited for your work, that's a limitation. It'll address unexpected results honestly, and it'll focus on reasoning. That's the big portion of this section here. The reasoning is going in the discussion. Whereas the conclusion question, often confused with the discussion section, is going to synthesize the project into its most important takeaways. As in, you just told me why your results mean something, what your results mean. You're telling me now the overall answer or outcome. You're trying to tie a bow on this entire project and tell me why the project matters and what should happen next. Because that's the key for all science. You should give the next person some clue on what they need to do to be able to help answer the question you set out to answer. Therefore, conclusion portions are forward-thinking, as in you should be thinking about the next steps quite a bit, as well as what it means for your topic overall. It should avoid repeating anything from the abstract, which we'll learn about writing an abstract later on. So we'll actually write the abstract last. It connects the work to a broader context, meaning what does your research, the stuff that you found, mean overall in the grand scheme of things? That is it for a project. You know the references section already. You know how to cite AMA, so I don't need to go through that. Best advice, start writing, have me proofread. Feel free to send me as many emails as you possibly want. I don't want you to think that you're on an island with this paper, but if you don't start writing, if you just sit there and be like, I don't know what I'm doing, and don't start writing anything, then there's nothing I can give you feedback on, just like the project proposal. Okay? So, let me know how I can help. That's today's video.